To kick things off, I'd like to pass the floor to our two guest speakers, and maybe we'll start with you, Victoria.
Everyone. My name is Victoria Oliver, and I am a senior consultant here at CIBC, specializing in commercial banking and large corporate and business banking for fraud strategy. And I've been at the bank for a little bit over 20 years, and I've spent most of my career dealing with commercial banking, digital, and fraud. And today we're going to be discussing some of the fraud trends that we've been seeing over the last few years. A lot of these started before the pandemic. One of the things about fraud is it's constantly evolving. So while we were seeing similar trends before the pandemic, the fraudsters unfortunately have evolved as we've evolved our working. We've now gone to remote and hybrid working styles. Unfortunately, the fraudsters have kind of followed us with that. They know we rely on things like this, like phone calls and emails, and that's where they're putting in some of their attacks. Um, I think one of the big things of that evolution that we've seen is artificial intelligence. We are seeing more and more artificial intelligence being used in different ways to do fraud. One of the big ones being deepfakes. And these can be those YouTube videos people see that has some celebrity mentioning a great crypto investment, but it also affects commercial and large corporate because we're also seeing deepfakes. And what a deepfake is a fraudster will get a little snippet of a video or an audio of somebody, and they can use that to create a phone call, even a video phone call that is mimicking that person to the point most human ears are not going to realize they are talking to a computer. So definitely we're seeing that evolution there. We're also seeing an evolution in fraud as a service. There is now a definite business and bad actors who offer things such as kits to do business email compromise or even services to do that on behalf of other bad actors. So it's definitely an evolving landscape. All of us are at risk, whether you're an individual or a small company or a large company or anything in between, you are at risk for fraud. And I think that was really proven in September 2024. Payments Canada released a report saying 1 in 5 Canadian businesses had experienced payment fraud in the last 6 months. And I think what really stands out is that large scale commercial businesses experience the highest rate of fraud at 26% compared to larger small businesses. So again, we're all at risk. So some of the fraud trends we're seeing, I think top of the list is the email compromises. We really started off with business email compromise, which is you getting an email that tells you to give data or do a transaction. And we're now also seeing client email compromise, where that email is actually coming from an internal email in your own organization. We are also seeing search engine optimization poisoning. This is an interesting one. We've been seeing it for years on the personal side. We're now starting to see it on the commercial, large corporate and business side. And it's really all about tricking you into clicking on a link from a search engine result that takes you to a cloned website that is trying to get your credentials. We are also seeing SIM jacking and number porting, and that's all about this. People on the phone, I don't think can see this, but I'm holding up my mobile phone. We do so much with our phone numbers. We get text messages from our colleagues. We may be getting a verification code on our phones. We may get having a phone call from other company or from the bank to verify a payment. Fraudsters want your phone number, and they're definitely using SIM jacking to get that. Cybersecurity incidents, Serge is also going to mention this one. This is all about data breaches such as ransomware, just plain old data breach. And you may wonder, what does this have to do? Why is a business fraud? Why am I discussing that today? Because unfortunately, these cybersecurity incidents are going after data. And a lot of data we have on our servers and on our networks is financial data. So they will use that to create other frauds. Check fraud, one of the oldest frauds we have seen. And it can be a counterfeit check, an altered check, or even a forged check. Little evolution here is we're starting to see some of these artifacts are coming out of data breaches and then being sold on the dark web. Phishing, again, one of the older frauds we've seen. Now, I think a lot of us, when we hear phishing, think email. Anybody who's gotten a Revenue Canada phone call or a phone call from Amazon or a text message from the 407 asking you to click or hit something has dealt with a phishing attack. And they're all about trying to get credentials and information usually as a stepping stone for other attacks. So it definitely has not gone away. They've just gotten a little bit better at doing it. And deepfakes, which I already mentioned, are the other one. Now, we don't have endless time today, so I'm only going to look at the top four, but do be aware of the others as well. So I have a question for everybody here and everybody on the phone. The FBI released a report in 2023, and what did they say was the average cost of a successful business email compromise? 25,000, 50,000, 125,500, or half a million US? Any ideas? Isabel, I don't know if we're getting any answers on the question
Not
and
yet.
answer for this.
Not yet.
Okay to shout it out too.
A million.
Shout it out, you can shout it.
A million.
Isabel, any answers from Q&A?
No.
It is actually the third. 125.5, which tells you why bad actors like doing this. You get 10 out of 100 and you've made $1 million. And we see that business email compromise has cost businesses more than $50 million to the FBI between 2013 and 2023. 2024 numbers are still coming in, but I assume that's going to be even higher. And 45% of businesses who responded to a payment Canada survey noticed an increase in fraud or suspicious activity directly through email. So what is business email compromise? I'm going to walk you through a couple of different cases that we've seen because there's a couple of different flavors of it. And the first one, Jane is at her desk. She receives an email from Bob from ABC Company. She and Bob have emailed back and forth for years, and Bob mentions that they are changing their bank account from TD to RBC. And Jane notices, when she gets the account, that they've also moved from Toronto to Vancouver, but the email looks legitimate. Bob even mentions a couple of conversations they've had before. It has the right payment IDs on it. So when she gets her next invoice from Bob a couple of days later for 1.2 million, she sends out an EFT to this new account at RBC. A little while later, a couple of days later, Bob calls her to say, we haven't received a payment. Like, you guys are late. She's like, no, we paid you. You told me to say it to this new RBC account. And Bob's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I didn't send an email. Unfortunately, Jane has been a victim of vendor business email compromise. This is when a vendor's account has been hacked or possibly spoofed. And the request is coming from a known supplier, so you feel comfortable in making that payment. The second type we see, Roger is getting an email from Paul, his CEO, and they work for a multinational company. And in the email, Paul says they're working on a top secret acquisition, and he needs to send a $3 million wire to China. And so Roger goes ahead, goes on to CMO, makes the payment. A little bit later, he gets an email from Randall, who works for Paul, saying, hey, did you send that wire out? And Roger sends back, yep, it's all sent, everything's good. He runs into Randall and Paul in the hall the next day, and he says, yeah, the wire's all good, everything seems to be good. And they're, what wire? I have no idea what you're talking about. I said, well, no, the wire you asked me to send for this project. And they have not seen any emails. They look at their emails. They have no idea what Roger's talking about. So they get IT to take a look. And they find out there's a bunch of forwarding rules on Paul and Randall's accounts, which say if they get an email from Roger or some other people, forward that email out to the bad actor and delete it out of the inbox. So Paul and Randall may have been having conversations with multiple people they did not know they were having. But the account was a legitimate account. That's why Roger didn't think he needed to do anything about it. So he immediately contacts us to try to recall the payment. Unfortunately, because it was going to a high-risk country, we aren't able to recover it. In the last case, HR receives an email from Victoria saying, hey, I've changed banks. Can you please send my pay to this new account? Payday comes around. I have no pay. The bad actor has my pay. So again, we have HR has to recall that payment, and then they have to repay me. So they're possibly out several $1,000s. And these are the three types of payments we're seeing, three types of fraud we're seeing. We're also occasionally seeing business email compromise used to get data. So, we're in tax season, just finishing tax season. You will have people bad actors try to get T4 slips for an entire organization and that they will then use for other fraud. So how do you protect yourself against this? It's a really easy thing, but it's one that a lot of us don't do. And that's to make an outbound phone call to a known number to confirm any account changes, data requests, data changes. Just call that person and say, just wanted to confirm this email. And it actually does a couple of things. One, it protects against business email compromise. Two, it protects against insider fraud. And three, it makes sure that if there's any typos or anything, you're protecting yourself. And that's for both for internal and external. Even if Sharma is emailing me, I'm still going to call Sharma back. I know it's his email account. I can't be 100% sure that it's Sharma until I talk to him. And again, face-to-face works as well. The other thing you want to do is really make it a practice that your employees are careful about what they're sharing on social media about where they work. Unfortunately, bad actors will troll social media sites, including LinkedIn, to get an idea of targets for particular organizations. And also, it's important to be careful even what your companies are sharing online. Sharing things like account numbers or even videos or audio may give fraudsters abilities to do unauthorized pads in the case of the account numbers and do deep fakes in the case of the video and phone calls. In fact, there was a case in Singapore last year where somebody was tricked into sending a wire out based on a video call with his CEO and several VPs. It turned out the only person on the call who was human was the victim. Everybody else they had managed to do a deep fake for. But again, the phone call out will protect you. Just a question for everybody in the room. Has anybody ever used a search engine to try to find a login to a website? If you have, you may be at risk of something called search engine optimization poisoning. Big word for bad actors making use of sponsored links on search engines. So what happens is Larry is our bad actor. He reaches out to a search engine and says, I want to buy some keywords. And I want them to be digital business, CIBC, login, and CMO. The search engine lets him buy them. And he then says, I want them to go to this link. And what the link is a cloned site of CMO. So he has actually taken the login page of CMO, cloned it, and that's where people are going to go. And a little while later, Daryl, who works for XYZ company, is working late. He wants to get some payments out before he goes home, but he's kind of in a hurry and he can't remember the login for CMO, so he goes onto the search engine. He types in digital business login. First one comes up as Larry's link. It looks good, so he clicks on it. He does notice that instead of being cibc.com, it's cibc.xcompay.com, but it's got CIBC in it, so it must be legitimate. And it looks just like the login page, though he does notice that it's now asking for his phone number as well, but he figures that's maybe a new security feature. So he tries to log in. Tries a couple of times, and he keeps getting error messages telling him his credentials are not correct. So finally, he figures, okay, it's late. I'm just going to leave. I'll deal with this. I'll call up CIBC and figure out why I can't get in. A little bit later, his coworker, Ashley, logs in and notices there's a whole bunch of wires created by Daryl about the same time Daryl was trying to log in. Now, they've all been deleted, but she calls Daryl to ask what was going on. Daryl's like, I didn't put any of these. It turns out that when Daryl went into that cloned website, he was giving his credentials, which Larry was then using to log into CMO, and Larry tried to do some wires. What stopped Larry was the fact that his company had separate maker and checker. And that's a really good way to protect against search engine optimization poisoning. Separate maker and checker. The chances that a bad actor is going to compromise two people is much smaller than compromising one person. The other ways that his organization could help protect against this in the future, always accessing CMO or any banking website via the parent page, so in our case, cibc.com. Bookmarking login pages also makes it a lot faster and you know for sure you're going where you want to go, and not using search engine for any kind of login page. And not just banking pages. We've heard of reports of this being used for things like Revenue Canada as well. Really, any place where they can try to get your credentials and do damage, they're going to try it. The other thing, as you saw, the other reason they were able to catch this pretty quickly was the reconciliation. It's really important to reconcile your statements on a regular basis, but not just your statements. You also want to look at things like CMO and make sure what's in your payment grid is what you think should be in your payment grid. And if it isn't, contact us. We'll help you figure out what's going on. So I had mentioned a little bit earlier about SIM jacking and number porting, all about getting access to your phone number. Um, so what happens is the bad actor gets hold of your phone number, and then they try to do things like intercept one-time verification codes from the SMS side and verification calls from the voice side. So I'm going to give you a couple of cases that we've seen. Erica was at an event, and she noticed about halfway through the event that suddenly she had an SOS icon on her phone, which was very unusual because everybody else on her network still had access. They were still getting phone calls and text messages. So Erica made a phone call to her telecommunications company, and they said, well, no, no, you called us a couple of hours earlier. You said your phone had been damaged in this horrible accident and you needed a new SIM card registered right away because you had to get hold of people. So we did it. No, I didn't. Um, and at the same time this was all going on, the bad actor who had done this was getting a phone call from one of Erica's clients confirming the account number change that they had just received in an email. Luckily enough, they didn't go ahead. They still thought something was weird and didn't make the payment. But this just shows by getting that phone number, they were now able to intercept all of Erica's messages. The other case we have, John suddenly realizes that he's not getting any phone calls. And when he looks, he's got a no service icon. So he calls up and he finds out in his case, he's a victim of something called number porting. In this case, the bad actor called another telecommunications company and said, hey, I'm John. I want to change my account to you guys and I want to port my number over. The frightening thing of this one is it isn't just mobile. Number porting can also be done on landlines. So again, if you're suddenly realizing you're missing calls and text, if you're getting a no service icon on your phone, those are red flags that something is going on and you want to get hold of your telecommunications company right away. I will admit I'm probably a little bit paranoid in this area. I've had a couple of cases, where I had access and then suddenly it disappeared. And I will admit in one case, I actually started driving back to the closest town to get to my telecommunications company to find out what was going on. Luckily enough, it turned out it was just a network blip, but my first thought was this may have been a SIM jacking. And, the FBI reported in 2023 that there was $49 million lost to SIM swap fraud. And in one recent case in Canada, 10 individuals were arrested who had compromised 1,500 accounts with the total dollar value of the frauds involved about over $1 million. So this is definitely an area they are after. So it's really important to be aware of what's going on if you're not getting phone calls, be taking care there. And to help preempt this, really important to have strong passwords on your telecommunications account. Serge is going to get into this a little bit more detail, but with passwords, there are certain accounts you want to have. That password is only for that account. This is one of them. Social media is another, and your email account's the third. Because what will happen is if there's a data breach, bad guys will try to take the information from one and try those passwords and various. So how many ransomware attacks were reported worldwide in 2023? 1,000, 3,000, 4,500, or 10,000? Isabel, any answers online?
Not yet.
I just would like to point out this is reported. We know whatever number is a lot higher. People tend to not report any of these types of fraud to law enforcement. We do really recommend you do want to report it for two reasons. One, they may catch the bad guy. Two, the more they know what's going on, the more resources they can put towards it. The Canadian Anti-Fraud Center is also another great one to let know. They're probably not going to be able to do anything legally, but again, they're keeping those records, which helps make some plans, I think, even for regulations. Isabel, anything yet?
Yeah, I do have 4,500.
Okay, that is actually the right answer.
Oh,
As I said, that's what we know was reported. It was probably close to 10,000, but people don't tend to report for a couple of reasons. One, they are nervous about what it's going to look like in the press. Two, they may feel a little bit embarrassed. So because of that, they tend not to talk about it. But the ones that have talked, the FBI received reports of ransomware totaling $12.4 million in losses and 365 million in data breaches with losses. So these are huge numbers. And again, it does prove that data is becoming the thing that bad actors are going after. And the reason they're going after data is they can get things like check images, bank statements, signature blocks, check stock if you are printing your own checks. They may also, depending on what they get into, can get your email records, a list of all your vendors, a list of all your clients, and they can use all that, or even better, they can sell it to somebody else. So the dark web gets all kinds of offers of sale from various bad actors to other bad actors with artifacts they have taken during these data breaches. And how they get in, they usually will use a computer virus. That computer virus could come in through an email, it could come in through a website, it could even come in through something you plugged into your device. And usually these viruses go through the whole network. They will take down ERP systems, servers, anything that they can get access to. They will take a copy of that data. And then depending on what their plans are, they may also encrypt your computers. And if they encrypt it, they're going to encrypt everything. So we have seen situations in the past in the news. There was an oil and gas company a couple of years ago who had a ransomware attack. They couldn't deliver gas for, I think it was 3 or 4 days. So when these attacks happen, they take everything and they lock you out completely. So on top of the fact that your banking information may have gone out the door, you're also not able to make payments. At some point, if it is ransomware, you're probably going to get be contacted by the fraudster, offering to, decrypt the files and commit not use the information they took in exchange for a ransom, usually in Bitcoin. They usually will decrypt. The not using the information is a little bit more questionable. So what do you do if this happens to you? You want to have a strong forensic team and coach involved. These are companies that all they deal with is data security type things. So they deal with ransomware, they deal with just regular data breaches. And when they come in, they look at your computers and your systems. They figure out what the fraudster is probably compromised. And they also then help you get back up and help you prevent an attack in the future. You also want to let us know for a couple of reasons. One, you're probably going to have a problem getting out things like payroll. We are here to support you. We will get our business contact center involved with helping you get your payments out. And also, you are now going to be at risk for other frauds. So we're here to help you determine what we need to do and what you need to do to help protect yourself. Maybe we may give you new accounts, new CMO IDs. We may also offer to come in and do a fraud webinar with your folks for best practices. Because again, all of the frauds I've mentioned, you're going to be at a higher risk for because they now have that data that makes it that convincing. And kind of yeah.
Can you go back to that slide?
Yeah.
First bullet point, $12.4 million. That seems low to me. Is that payout?
That would be probably payout, and it would be ones that they reported. People tend not to report, especially in the US. There's some laws around paying ransomware, and you're not supposed to. So a lot of people aren't going to tell the FBI they did.
Is low.
Yeah, it strikes me as low, but again, that's where we know what is told and what's actually happening are.
Their numbers are higher.
And also,
Victoria, can I just stop you for a minute? Can you try to speak closer, or I don't know, like
Sure.
I'm getting comments that it's too low, the sound is too low.
okay, how's this?
So if you, this is much better, much
Okay,
better.
sorry about that, guys.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm actually going to kind of go through what happened with the cybersecurity incident. This is kind of based on some of what we've seen, some of what we've seen in the news as well. So ABC Company, they're a large national company. Their folks come in on Monday morning and they can't get into any of their computers, and they're getting ransomware messages showing up. So they immediately get their IT department to look, and their IT department discovers that they have a virus on their machine that has gone, virus on their network that has gone through the entire network, including their email servers and their ERP servers, and has locked everything down. It's encrypted everything. They also are fairly certain data's gone out, but they're not 100% sure. So the first thing they do that same Monday morning is they get hold of a cybersecurity, a forensic team and coach to determine what has been affected. They do this for 2 reasons. One, they want to find out what's happened, and 2, their insurance company tells them they need to. Pretty much every cybersecurity insurance now will insist that you have a cybersecurity coach to deal with these issues. They also realize that they can't get payroll out. So Bob from ABC Company, I think people may remember Bob was at the very beginning of this presentation too. Bob calls Dana at his RM at CIBC and says, we've had this horrible incident. I can't get payroll out. We're not sure what else has happened. So Dana says, Bob, I'm going to get hold of my people. We'll get a meeting with you set up this afternoon. So by end of day, Dana has arranged a meeting with our business client center with somebody from fraud, probably me, and ABC to get some more information. And in the meantime, the cybersecurity coach has already realized that one of the things that was touched was the server that had check stock and signature blocks because ABC company prints their own checks. So we also suspend CMO at this point because the problem is some of these viruses that come in aren't just encrypting. They will also leave other viruses that will do something called a man-in-the-middle attack. And what a man-in-the-middle attack is, it's kind of like the search engine optimization poisoning. You think you're going to a particular website, but the bad actor has actually tricked your browser into going to their cloned website. So because of that, we suspended until we can get everything cleaned up because we want to not add more issues to what you're already going through. And then we have our meeting. And one of the first things we find out is that the check stock and they think bank statements have been compromised. So what we do is we suggest, first of all, they need new accounts. We do understand that is sometimes a major undertaking for a company. So we will work with them on a schedule. We're not just going to suddenly close everything and reopen it because we know you've got to get hold of vendors and all that. We also give them new CMO IDs. And we also mentioned that until their accounts are closed, they are at higher risk of both check fraud and unauthorized pre-authorized debits. What will happen sometimes is that if a bad actor can get an account number, they will actually put a pad request in from their FI to take money out of yours. Now, you do have 90 days to return those, but obviously we want to stop those from happening altogether. So that's the other reason why we give you new accounts. We also, go through with ABC some of the other potential frauds they could be seeing in the future, and that includes business email compromise, because there's a good chance their vendor and client list went out, which means the bad actors may use the connections they know to send emails to their clients or their vendors to try to get account number changes done. So we go through them with that. We also offer to do a webinar, which they take us up on, to let all their folks know some of the fraud trends I've been discussing today. And then the BCC works with our client, with ABC company, to get the transactions out. And once ABC has gotten through their system, probably about 2 weeks, they let us know that everything's clean. We then give them new user IDs for CMO, get CMO set back up. But the pain that they're going through is going to continue for a while. You all remember, Jane got an email from Bob at ABC company. That was probably because that data went out in that data breach, and they knew that Jane was one of their clients. They knew all the information, so they were able to use that to trick Jane into making the payment. They're also a little bit later, there's some counterfeit checks, but those, because they closed their accounts, don't really hurt them. But this definitely does go on for a while. And I think that would be the other thing I'd say too. Once you've had one fraud, you are at more risk of other frauds. But again, the best ways to protect yourselves against all of these frauds are making those phone calls out. If anything seems the least little bit off, make a phone call out. If you're getting a phone call from somebody and it just doesn't seem right, again, say, be polite, but hang up, wait a little bit, call them back at a known number to confirm it is actually them calling you. And making sure your systems are up to date helps a great deal. All that's operating systems, and also all of your operating systems on things like phones and iPads also should be always kept up to date. And finally, let the bank know if something is off. We are here to protect you. We are here to help you, and we're always happy to jump on a call to discuss what you're going through. So I know it sounded a bit scary, but as I said, you can protect yourself, and I think we can open it up for questions.
Start off. Thank you. My question is about the dark web of information getting
Yeah.
sold over there. How much is my name, my email, my all that's worth?
It depends. Each person is going to be different. But truthfully, if you have anything on the internet, if you have anything on social media, there's a good chance that's out there. There's a good chance that you may have been the victim of a breach. I think so. Just ways that you can see if your email address, for example, was part of a data breach. You can give you a link for that. But pretty much, I think all of us probably have something on the dark web. It's hard to say for each person, but it is a definite commerce site down there, just not a good one.
Victoria.
Hi.
I'm from Northern Power. My name is
Okay.
Shreya. You mentioned about how we can go on to CIBC's website, and if it's from a search engine, you go on to say a fraudulent website and put in your user credentials, and they get access to your information. The question I had was CIBC has RSA secure ID tokens. So how does that and how do they override the
The way that
two-factor?
great question. The way they do that is because you are entering it into a clone site. There's now when you enter it into ours, we don't see what you type, only our computers. When you enter it into a clone site, they're actually seeing clear text. So as you're typing it, they're typing it into the CMO.
Okay.
So kind of think of it as like somebody surfing over your shoulder and typing as you type. And that's the really scary part of it, which is again why we recommend separate maker checker. We've had, to be quite frank, a lot of the ones we've seen didn't go anywhere because there was somebody else had to approve it. The bad actor realized that and they immediately deleted the payments.
you, Victoria. I have a lot of questions in my head, but I'll just maybe ask one or two. When you talked about the SIM porting, like
Yeah.
the capability being ported away from you or your phone, so is it better than to do email authentication or perhaps Face ID? Like, what are the measures?
The best thing is if you have push notification, you want to take it because push notification. So there's different ways of doing a one-time verification code. There's the tokens you guys all know, if you do CMO. And then there's one-time verification codes that are sent through text messages or email. Those are probably the most risky because that's where people can intercept. But if you have it pushed to your device, they have to have your actual device in their hand. So for example, if you are doing personal banking, I know I'm talking about commercial, but for everybody in the room, if you're doing personal banking, you definitely want to push. If two-factor authentication is available, you want to take that as well. Because now they're going to have to get two things, not only your phone, but they need to know what the other answer is as well.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you. And then the other question, it's probably around personal banking as well.
Okay.
But there have been times where I'm trying to link my one account to another account at another institution, and it goes through a third-party provider where it says, okay, you have to kind of go through the service to allow that to happen for like electronic transfers. Is that safe at all?
It's iffy. You're kind of relying on how trustworthy the company you're dealing with is. You may also, depending on the bank, be running into some issues with the terms and conditions because normally we don't want you sharing that with other people. And there's also the fact too that if you've now put that information out to a third group who, if there's a data breach, they now have your data. So, but I think with open banking, we're going to start seeing some ways that make that a lot safer.
Thank you very much.
Good, I'll take that.
Thanks. Thanks, Tim.
Make sure I noticed when I sign into CMO, of course, there's a PIN
Yeah.
and then there's the token code, but the client number 4 or 5, whatever it is, like that's there. I mean,
Yeah.
should that be there? Or should I?
I think you're fine because again, it's three things. This is multi-factor, which is
Right.
why we like it. You need to know the PIN, you need to know your token, and you need to know your ID. Now, that being said, that's if you're using your computer. If you're using a public computer, you definitely don't want it to save it. The chances of anybody getting in are very slim, but you still just don't want anybody to know what that number is. But if it's on your own computer, and in some ways you're more protected that way because if you get a keylogger virus, which actually will look at every single thing you type, if it's already saved, it can't take it. But great question.
Recently, I was asked by CRA to identify myself. So they asked me to take a picture and like a selfie and that kind of thing. But I didn't know that even that is not bulletproof.
Yeah.
There are software. I just saw a piece on the news that where the processor is holding everything like you're supposed to do, and he's masking his face. So behind his face, there's someone else's face.
Yeah, and that's kind of why this is one of the major problems, and this is part of the evolution. As artificial intelligence is happening more and more, fraudsters are finding workarounds for that. And that's why now usually you'll be asked for a bunch of things, a picture of yourself, something else, usually something you know. But it is always very interesting, and I'd be interested to see how CRA does deal with that in the future. Because yes, there is a possibility now that somebody could take your face, so to speak, and pretend to be you. And as I said, the best one to me is the video call. Like you think about it, you're on a video call with multiple people and you're the only person there. frankly kind of sci-fi scary. And we're unfortunately living in that now. And that's why the phone calls out are so important because you're in control, whereas every other place you're responding to what you think you're getting.
Isabel, questions online?
Yes, Bill.
Yes, I do have a question from Monica, I believe, from, sorry, I have a blank, sorry, Clearwater. Europe is moving away from the ability to use checks because of the high risk of fraud. Do we see Canada and the US doing the same?
I think we've been actually trying to do that for years. Unfortunately, there are places where checks still seem to be the best answer, but we do strongly recommend if you can move to a digital payment, you should. And I think eventually checks will go away. It's just taking a lot longer. I'll admit, I've been at the bank for 20 years. When I started, I was told checks would be gone by 2020. You'll notice we still have checks. But yeah, I think we are all trying to move away from them, though we do appreciate for some companies, checks are still the best answer, especially depending on who your clients are. Like I know there are some clients who just don't feel comfortable getting a direct deposit and they still want a check. But if you can get them to go over to direct deposit, much better.
Perfect. So we don't see the countries though enforcing or doing anything on that. Like
Not, I haven't heard of anything of that. And I
Yep.
know that the UK actually tried that a couple of years ago. They're still writing checks as well. Again, it's getting over certain demographics, and I don't know if we're ever going to get over those fully.
So I'm getting ends up, but I don't think I could give the right to speak, right? So maybe if Lily and Isabel could write those questions in the Q&A section, I will publish them and ask for it.
But we have a question in the room as well.
Okay, good. So let's do that. And Lily and Isabel, if you could write your question, please.
Good presentation.
Oh, thank you.
We were actually in a kind of attack, so a lot of the stuff hit home and we're making a lot of changes.
Yes.
I've noted some of the items down. Do you guys have any sort of handouts or anything for?
Great question. We have a tip sheet that I will provide to the team to send out to you. It has all the trends I discussed, with the exception of SEOP. We're in the midst of updating it for this year. But it does explain the trends on the front, and the back actually tells you all the mitigations. On top of that, we are happy to come in and do this kind of presentation, a little bit more aimed at employees. And both myself, you can either do a fraud trends or you can do one that will include Surge's cybersecurity. We love to come in and do these, and for anybody in the room, but we would definitely be quite happy to come in and sort of tell everybody what the best practices are. Because frankly, we're happiest if I never had another incident to deal with because everybody had the best practices, I would be so happy.
Very good question from Lily. Can I go ahead?
Yep.
So Lily from Bell, what do you suggest for checks fraud other than enhanced positive pay? Question mark. And then also, is debit blocked available in Canada?
So we do have ways that we can put messages on your account to stop payments going out. We don't usually have the ability to say just one particular type of payment. In regards to the checks, definitely positive pay is a great idea. The bigger thing I would say too is making sure you're reconciling on a regular basis. And if you're writing a lot of checks, that may be daily or weekly. And when you're doing the reconciliation, it's not just the statement. I think we all tend to, and I include myself in this, you tend to think, well, I see the check number, I see the amount in the statement, it's what I wrote, everything's fine. The problem is with altered checks and even counterfeit checks, depending on how they've done it, the account number and the amount may be correct. If you looked at the payee, it's not who you paid. So we do strongly recommend, if it's at all possible, look at your check images too, just to make sure the name you made the payment to is the name that you thought is the name of the person who cashed it. Enhanced positive pay does that for you, but you can also just do it, with your ERP systems or whatever. But I think that's the best way. And of course, moving away from checks. Also, if you are using checks, really important to get the checks that have the security features. It doesn't stop counterfeiting and altered, but it makes it a lot harder. And fraudsters, if things are hard, tend to go try to attack somebody else.
To add on to the piece on the debit blockers, it's something we're looking to handle. So if there's an interest, please make sure you let your respective cash managers know so they can include potential interest in that offering as well.
Thank you on that. Sharma, I was just going to add that, so definitely. I have one last question, and then we're going to move on with the section for Serge. A question from Fatima. Unfortunately, when it comes to issuing RRSP checks for employees, all the banks still require a physical copy of the checks. Would you be able to shed some light, on this? Why this is the case, or if there are any alternatives we could explore?
I think this is still sort of along the regulations. I don't know exactly why the regulations are that way. I know we did try in the past to try to get away from paper checks. And that initiative was back in the early 2010s and it didn't seem to go anywhere. As to getting away, if you have people who are willing to accept direct deposit, that's probably your best option through EFT. If not, I think unfortunately we're still stuck with paper checks for the time being. But again, I think this is around that whole check conversation, which I'm sure at some point the government will be revisiting. I just don't know when.
Perfect, thank you.
Maybe just have one last.
Perfect. Where's first, right? Thanks, David.
Just wondering what your views are on callback procedures as a preventive measure for wire fraud.
I think callback procedures are a great idea. Again, by call, you get the email, you call it back. And in some cases, I would say if it's a very large amount, you may want to call 2 people for a couple of reasons. One, there's always the possibility that there's something going on inside. 2, it just again helps to make sure that the information you have is correct. And if you're sending out a 3 or 4 or 5 or $20 million wire, it never hurts to make 100% sure that the BIC and the account number is correct. And really for us, callback procedures are the biggest thing we suggest. And again, sometimes also we will even suggest if you're not sure, call back somebody else. Like maybe you're getting it from Sharma, but you call Sandy to confirm it.
Some of our concern is that we're just calling back the fraudster.
And that's why you always want to do a known number on file. You definitely don't want to use the email because if you are, there's a good chance you're calling the fraudster. And I just would mention as well, if you do a callback and you don't get an answer and a little bit later you get an email or a text message saying, hey, it's Victoria, I'm in a meeting, go ahead and do it. Don't go ahead and do it. You want to talk to the person verbally. We've had this, bad actors know we tell you guys to do this, so they should figure out a way around it. And now, of course, with deep fakes, even me calling back, you still want to be the one who's initiating the call. I appreciate it adds a little bit of time to get stuff done. But if you are calling a known number, it is probably the best way to protect against it. And I would say too, if somebody's letting you know that they've changed their contact information, you want to contact them through another method just to make sure they did actually get a new cell phone and you're not talking. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Serge to discuss strategy for cyber resilience.
Great. Thanks, Victoria. And thanks for all the questions in person and virtually. Just before we hop over to Serge, I think I'm just going to be searching myself on the dark web after this, after you mentioned that all of us might be on it. Absolutely.
Web is a very scary place. And because I get people saying, well, I want to go into it. It's like, no, you don't, because it actually will. There's a good chance you're going to come out of it with a little bit more stuff than you were expecting.
Yeah, that's a good tip. Serge, I'll pass the floor to you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. I'm going to talk to you about strategies for cyber resilience. Sort of about my background here, I'm the director of cybersecurity awareness and training at the bank. I'm also the director of risk metrics, risk insights, so tracking, key risk indicators, things like that. My background is I started in the corporate security world in 2007. I was at RIM, makers of the BlackBerry, and I was in the awareness function. And then 2017, I came from Loblaw. So, and then I was in Loblaw, and in 2022, I joined the bank. But in that inter period is when I was actually doing a lot of consulting with small, medium businesses, talking about what I'm going to talk to you about today, which is how to manage your cyber risk. So we use the word cybersecurity a lot. I like the word cyber risk management because it's about managing risk. Secure gives you the sense that you have absolutely no risk. I think that's the wrong approach here. So a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today will be things that you might already be doing. So look at this as an opportunity to sort of validate what you're doing today. And if there's something I mentioned that you're not doing it, it gives you a chance to take that back to your teams and say, hey, how come we're not doing this? And maybe we should start doing this. Let's go right into it. So cyber risk is the number one business risk of any business of any size, any vertical. If you're online, you have an exposure. So you have to be dealing with it. It is an enterprise risk. It is not a technical risk. So a lot of times this resides in the field of the IT team, just because naturally through evolution, IT, technology, the technology is at risk. Therefore, we need to have a security team that protects the technology. But it's actually much larger than that. There's a lot of aspects of cyber risk that go beyond just technology, and especially its impact. One thing I also want to mention is because we have been spending a lot of money to solve the problem. Uh, Obviously, technology is a lot more prevalent now, available. There's a lot more solutions available. But anybody want to guess, like at what rate the cost of cybercrime is increasing versus the spend? 300%. 300%. As let's use it as a times. Like, is it 5 times, 3 times? You want to guess? It's actually 12 times. So what does that tell us? Let's just step back from the technology world. If you're spending more money to solve a problem and the problem's getting worse, what does that tell you about the solution? It's not working. It's the definition of insanity, actually. If you're expecting to do the same thing and get different results, it's not going to happen. So this is why it's really important to look at cyber security or cyber risk management as an enterprise thing. So that means combination of people, technology, process, things like that. Again, as I mentioned, it is a strategic risk. So let's talk about who's behind this. Um, Really, the number one is criminals. Let's just cut to the chase. I think we like to think it's all sorts of these other players in there, but it's really criminal syndicates. Think of it this way: the the crimes behind extortion online and the fraud stuff that Victoria's talking about, the penalties are a lot less than, say, human trafficking, drug trafficking, things like that. That's why they do it. They make the same amount of money, if not more, and there's a lot less laws around it. And there's less extradition laws. You can operate pretty much without impunity uh, through different regions of the world. Takes me to nation states. This is not just espionage, but this is actually nation states that support cybercrime syndicates, and they use it as part of their GDP. So they give them a safe harbor to operate, do all the things they have to do, and they get kicked back. When you think about like other parts of the world, I'm talking primarily like, there's a story that goes that there was an attack that came out of Russia, and it was malware. And what it did, it looked for whether the keyboard had a Cyrillic, a plugin. So if it knew that it had Cyrillic alphabet, it wouldn't attack that particular computer. So then a lot of people started doing it as a patch, like they would just put that little bit of a add in there to stop those viruses from attacking it. So you think it's a lot of state-sponsored action, but there's also state espionage, especially if you're in a space and somebody wants to stand up a business really quick, they'll just try to steal your R&D. There's hacktivists. Those are people are usually behind, trying to prove a point. It's usually kind of harmless. It's just more of embarrassing. They're not really known for extortion, stuff like that. So it might be the business you're in, maybe some political positions you've taken that they will react that way. And finally, the one is insiders. And I don't think of insiders like, think of it insider risk. Sometimes we used to call it insider threat, but that's a little bit a deceptive word. So it's people who are exposures, whether it's malicious, and I'll tell you what, most of the time the malicious insider is a very small population. The problem is why they get a lot of attention is because they have a lot of access, they have a lot of inside information, they can cause a lot of damage. So you really want to have something in place. If you think someone's malicious on the inside, you want to make sure that your organization knows how to report it. The other one is accidental. People don't know what to do. People are just trying to do their jobs for the most part, so they take shortcuts. Maybe there's not any solution for them, so they come up with a solution to do their job, and accidentally exposes the organization to risk. So that's a big part of what I do here and a big part of my career. And I'll talk a lot about that later on in my presentation, but I just want to get into some trends and emerging threats. And a lot of these were covered by Victoria already. Ransomware is something that's not going away. It sort of changes as well. It goes from don't pay to pay to don't pay to pay. Ultimately, it's whether you feel what your position on that is. Do you think you can recover if you don't pay? Are you okay with your information being put out there on the marketplace to be sold? Those things. The other thing is the best solution for ransomware is just don't get it put in a position where you have to deal with ransomware, and that comes down to a lot of good employee behaviors, good security, which again I'm going to be talking about in a bit. Cloud is also being targeted, so a lot of people put a lot of things on cloud. If you put your you wear the criminal hat. If I instead of hitting 10,000 individual businesses, now I just have to hit one business that has 10,000 companies' information on it. Now they're very well protected, but there's issues with configurations. If you're not connecting to the cloud correctly, you could expose yourself. So personally, I'm an on-premise guy. That's kind of the way I like to look at it. All your information is on site because then at least you know you can secure it. You don't have to depend on somebody else. Keep in mind also when it comes to risk and incidents, you can't blame the custodian for the incident. If your information is leaked because of a cloud attack, the cloud provider is not going to be the one that's going to get the bad press. They'll get some of it, but your organization will get most of it. Third parties are also easier to exploit. So if you have supply chains or you might be part of a supply chain, you're likely being targeted to get in. So think of it this way: instead of attacking the castle, you basically attack the village, and the village will open the door to the castle for you. And that's really the idea behind it. So if you've given privilege access to a supplier or part of your third party network, if they get exploited, the attacker might be able to walk right into your system. And the Internet of Things is vulnerable to attack. So if your business has things such as environmental controls connected to the internet because it's easy to turn on and off, anything that's connected to the internet could be turned off. So if you have perhaps you have some equipment, if your manufacturing is connected to a system that's also connected to the internet, someone could turn off your assembly line that way. So those are the type of things you got to keep in mind. Social engineering, again, I'm just going to go over this quickly because it's already been talked about, but AI is fueling a lot of these changes, a lot of deep fakes, phishing emails. No longer you're not going to get an email that has spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes. It's going to have low quality um, images. You can go to a system online and just say, give me a phishing email about a late delivery from Amazon, and it'll spit one out for you. So everything looks really authentic. That includes the websites that are maybe behind some of those links that are deceptive. Legitimate platforms and softwares are being targeted. So if you have, how many people get LinkedIn invitations from people you have no idea who they are? Yeah. And then, listen, in LinkedIn's defense, they're not vetting people. But what they're doing is attackers are joining into LinkedIn and then they start sending out these recruitment emails. I want to connect with you. Now they have access to your network. It just builds their network. It also allows them to send potentially malicious emails through their network. And that's how they're being exploited. Same thing with software sites. You'll have like app stores and stuff like that. They don't necessarily do a very good job of vetting the applications. So there might be an application that looks like something like a game or a utility, and it may not be that actual utility, but it's called that. So that might be something you have to really pay close attention when you're downloading, because you might be downloading a piece of malicious software. And then there's something called double barrel attacks, which is the idea is a multi-channel attack. So Victoria talked about that. You might get a phone call after an email. Hey, I sent you something. Could you open it up? Text messages. It's the idea that it just makes itself legitimate. I might send you an email that is a malicious email, and then I follow up with a phone call or a text message. You go, oh yeah, I remember getting that email. Person told me it's okay. I can click on it. And again, the insider risk part of it is what I've already talked about. So this is sort of the meat of my presentation coming up on there. These are strategies for organizational cyber resilience. Now, I like the word cyber resilience because it implies getting back off the mat really quickly. Uh, it's not a matter of if a cyber attack is going to happen to you. It's when. And I'm sure you don't have to put. I don't have to see a show of hands here, but I'm pretty sure almost everyone in this room who's visiting us as a guest has had to experience one of these at one level or another. And if you haven't, good for you. That's great. But it's 2025. This game has been going on for a long time. So the first thing I always tell people is identify your crown jewels, both digital and non-digital. We hear in my space, I hear a lot of digital crown jewels. Well, a crown jewel to me, if I was a business, is maybe it's the trust that I have in my business community, and people can trust me with their whether I'm a law firm or an accounting firm. Like I have to be trusted. So that's a non-digital crown jewel, but it's incredibly important. If I lose trust, I lose my business. And then, of course, if you're digital, then you look at your systems that are the most critical to your organization. Know your risk exposures and identify internal vulnerabilities. So things like, do you have a large supply chain? Do you have a large supply chain of small businesses? That's a vulnerability. That's a risk exposure. What about internal vulnerabilities? Well, we use systems that are kind of old. We're not on the latest Windows. We don't have multi-factor authentication. That's an internal vulnerability. So you need to identify all those so that way you know how to tackle them. And you got to tackle them bit by bit, and you prioritize them internally. You don't want to just go in there and try to fix it all because it's like boiling the ocean, and that'll stop your roadmap to cyber resilience because it'll get too hard. It'll be very hard from a financial perspective too to ask for the budget to fix all these challenges. So you want to roadmap this one out. Cyber strategy must equally address people and technology. There is no technology out there that you can buy that will solve all your problems. I hear it all the time. I hear people tell me, "Well, we put this in now, so we're good now, right?" Well, we're better. We're not 100% without risk. People are a huge driver on this. And going back to what I was saying earlier, why the spend is getting outstripped by the losses is because we keep spending for technology. Let's put more technology in place. Let's put more, and the attackers know this, so they work through people and they find ways to exploit people, ways to exploit processes that are exposed, and technology can't prevent it. Educate your board on cyber risk as well and report back on progress. The reason why you want to do that is, I mean, most boards, I would imagine at this point in time, are aware of cyber risk, and they probably challenged you and say, what are we doing to prevent cybercrime? How do we prevent ourselves from being in the news for having a big attack? You want to make sure that you're doing that because it also keeps you honest, and it requires you to provide updates. How's the progress going? Because unless you're actually being held to account, these things do have a tendency to fall off the radar, especially if your security function is embedded in your IT function. IT function is to make things productive for employees and allow them to easily do their jobs. If that becomes a priority, let's say today, for example, there's a big outage. Everybody's laser focused on getting those systems back up. How can I make sure my people can connect to the office and get their emails? Security takes a back seat. So you want to make sure that you're doing that. The other thing is have a dedicated budget and team to manage cyber risk. This should be a team that is ideally reporting up to either the president, CEO, or at minimum the chief financial officer. Anyone actually in this, my understanding is the people in this room in your space, because we're all in the loss prevention business. Nobody cares more about the bottom line than the money people. So that's where that group should reside, because it also creates a relationship with IT that is parent and child. I'll tell you who the parent is: security. So when you have peers, that's where I have personally seen there's a logjam. So a peer will ask a peer to do something, whether it's patch a system, roll out a technology, and it takes a backseat to all those other things I told you about. But if it's a parent-child relationship, that changes the dynamic a lot. Also, good idea to talk to an insurance broker. You've probably already done that, but cyber risk insurance, it's a very, very complicated insurance. I was involved heavily in the early days of cyber insurance. So there was something called the Beasley Breach Response. It was a policy way back in 2012. when I was supporting the insurance industry across North America to help position it. It is something that there's a lot of nuances. The worst case scenario is you buy coverage, you think you're covered because of an incident, and you find out when you make a claim that you didn't have the necessary verbiage or the rider that's in place for that. A good broker will tell you what you need. They'll understand your business and they'll give you the coverage you need. And retain service, if you can, or have your insurance company will probably have this as well, but it's a cybersecurity incident response firm. So they get involved with diagnostics, what happened, what was lost. The PR part of it is huge. Arranging to have the credit checks if you've had a bunch of customers that have been compromised, to arrange to have credit checks and things like that. Your insurance company will have that, or your policy. If they don't, this is where you might want to have that conversation. Any questions on anything I talked about in this list here? Okay. Now the last part is cyber resilience is the goal. The goal is to be resilient. We're not going to prevent this from happening. The key is, will you be able to get back up and running, and can you demonstrate due diligence? Due diligence goes a long way in the courts, by the way, because if something happens and there's a breach and you knew about it and you didn't do anything about it for an extended period of time, that usually doesn't end well when it comes to making decisions in court and with your customers, the court of public opinion. But if you actually did your best and you can demonstrate that you tried to stop these things from happening, that goes a long way. So I'm going to talk to you about something that's near and dear to my heart, and that's practices for your people. So this is an opportunity to take some of this away, to talk to your team. If you have a I hope you have a cybersecurity awareness person there. I'm going to be evangelist of why this is important till I stop actually working. So dedicate a resource to your awareness and training program. Have someone who does it full time. If you have some, it's Bob does it 20%, Mary does it for another 20%. Jane does it for 40%. You're going to get a really disjointed effort. This is something that people need to understand. You need to have a marketing person too. You need to have someone who understands connecting with people. That doesn't mean a technical person. I'm the least technical person in my field, so I can actually talk to people in the banking centers. I can talk to people in the legal departments and marketing departments, and they understand what I'm saying, versus if I was coming at it from a technical perspective. Train your employees to spot phishing. That's your number one security incident. So that could be any number of things. That could be really detailed annual training. If you're running tests where you send out test lures to them and track their progress, that stuff's all great. We do that here. It's actually the one way you can get awareness to people, like directly. So it's not, most people just do annual training and then you forget about it. Ongoing testing program is a great way to do that. Educate your employees on the risk of oversharing on social media. You put too much stuff out there, whether it's, and that just not just like the Instagrams, the Facebooks, or LinkedIn. In fact, most of the time when I do a search to understand what could be a possible lure, we get results from LinkedIn where people are telling you what you're working on. People will tell, like, in my job at the bank, I work on this system where the attackers know this. So those are public. If they're public profiles, they mine that to get all their information. Think of this as a 1,000-piece puzzle. Every little piece of information gives them a clearer picture. Then they can use that information against you, against your organization, against your loved ones. Use corporate email for work purposes only. Victoria alluded to this. I'll send the link over to the team. They can share it. But there's if you use your work email for non-work purposes, it's now residing on a service that you can't vouch for their cybersecurity. So there's an issue with it, and they get compromised. Your email is now out there, and they now have a connection to you and your workplace, and they can target it that way. And that's especially true for passwords. Make sure people don't ever use their work passwords for anything else but work. It requires strong passwords. And I'll also send over a link, which is like a little tester, which shows how strong your password is. But it's really important to have a unique password for your work account, and then tell your people to actually, for their sensitive accounts, whether it's their banking accounts, to have unique passwords. Passwords gets really hard when you start having 200 accounts or 200 passwords, and we get into bad habits. So there's a couple ways to manage that. And again, people who think about cyber risk at home are more secure in their professional lives. That's always been my philosophy. take something away from what what I tell my employees, and that way they can share with their, with their parents, with their kids, and that way they're thinking about it in their personal lives. If they're thinking about cyber risk at home, you're going to think about it in their professional lives. So if you have an awareness program, I would recommend that you include that. It comes down to what's in it for me, and a lot of people respond to that. So that's the end of my presentation. I know we're up on time, but if anyone has any questions about anything that I talked about, or you just want to chat cyber risk, I'm happy to answer any questions.
A very quick one. In terms of the password management, is it safe to use a password manager?
It's about your risk tolerance. I can send a link along about what the best ones are. I have a password manager, but it's a BlackBerry, and BlackBerries, if you remember, they were like bulletproof. So it was an onboard one. So some of them are in the cloud, some of them auto generate, some of them keep them on your device. Um, it really is about risk tolerance, but it is a good way to manage it. And I know some organizations are now approving password managers, what I find really interesting, because I've seen this happen a couple times, and all of a sudden that initiative stops when the password manager gets hacked. And then they're like, whoa, we got to change gears on this. So it is a good way to do it. It's much better than writing it down on a post-it note or adding 1, 2, 3 to your passwords. But it's about what you think works for you.
If I could just add on that, Serge, I'm a true believer of using password management device apps, and I really like Bitwarden. So I have no shares in it, but I really like, and I strongly recommend.
Not a question, but a comment. I was at a seminar similar to this a few months ago. I think it was the CPAs were putting it on, but what struck me was the presenter said, with respect to cybersecurity preparedness, he said, "You never cross the finish line."
Yeah, it makes my blood run cold when I hear executives say we just got to stay one step ahead of the bad guys. This is a cat and mouse game. I mean, if you're one step behind the bad guys, one step behind, I think you're doing fantastic because you're usually about 5 to 10. They are highly motivated. They have no limits. They are not limited by time, scope, or budget, which all of us are, and our teams are. So it's really important to have that perspective that you're always playing catch up. And I actually had this exact conversation with. She's now retired, but she was the head of the cybercrime division in Toronto, and she says no, it's always cat and mouse. We're always chasing. We're always chasing.
I think just to add to that, a lot of the bad actors now, it is organized crime, as Serge mentioned, nation states. So this is now their 9 to 5 job, and they aren't bound by regulations and everything.
And you've got a lot of highly motivated young people looking for a quick buck. So you probably heard a story. There's a guy in Hamilton. He was driving around in a Lamborghini in the wintertime, and that's how they figured out he was a hacker, and he was involved in the Yahoo breach. So yeah, quick money, fast money, easy money.
Any other questions?
Okay, well, as Victoria extended the offer, I'll repeat it again. If you want us to do a session, I can do more of an employee-focused one, which is what I would do here. You're welcome to you reach out to the team, and we'll be happy to talk to your teams individually. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for coming today. I just want to send a big thank you to our guest speakers for putting together the presentation, and as well as our marketing team. They've done a phenomenal job in putting together the lunch, the presentation, and just coordinating all of the audio video. There goes my name tag. But no, just appreciate everybody coming. If there's any questions that you had on any of the content that we presented today, please reach out to your cash manager and we'd be happy to set up a follow-up call or just send you an email. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.